from Cincinnati's first television station. This is WLWT News 5 at 11.
A disappointing season for the Bengals, finally over. Now the big question, does Marvin Lewis still have a job?
All I know is that officially today I'm no longer employed, I guess.
We're going to learn quite a bit more about this situation over the next 24 hours. Marvin finished his 8th season as the Bengals head coach. His contract is now up. There are reports that Marvin would like to come back, but only if Mike Brown is willing to make some changes in the way the team operates. For starters, Marvin would like to see more help in the personnel or scouting department. But if Brown doesn't bend, then Marvin is probably gone. And maybe Brown wants to move on too. According to Marvin, after today's game, this has been going on for a while.
You know, this has been going since the bye week last year, okay? And we haven't gotten things settled. And now we're at the end. Everybody speculates on this and that. Let's just, you know, I like where things are, and just want, you know, as my boss says, I'm probably saying too much, so.
Coming up on this edition of Sports Rock, now that the Bengals season is over, we'll examine who will stay and who will go. Our Bengals roundtable has been commissioned. Simply the fittest man in America.
I like that.
But back in the day, these quarterbacks were so afraid to throw.
Very fair.
At
Very
number
fearful.
22.
Fearful.
We have word that some of these guys just hid. They just wouldn't even show up and play. I remember Warren Moon just said, I'm not going to play.
And then he served it up a couple times.
That's right. And what'd you do?
Well, I caught a couple of them, knocked a couple of them down.
Oh, there you go.
That away.
I would love Eric Thomas from the Pro Fitness Academy.
That's right. How are you, young man?
His name better be illegal, you know that.
That's right.
Also, back to The Rock, we have The Rock, the most feared safety in the entire NFL.
Yes.
And had ET's back on a lot of those plays. David Fulcher. Good to have you. All of them but one, right?
I don't know if I had all his back. He used to tell me.
What was the one? I'm not going there.
I thought we decided we were going to blame Solly.
Yeah, okay, we'll blame Solly because he's not here.
And we've got some fresh meat with us. He protected the likes of Boomer Esiason and David Klingler. Oh, he is a man that I constantly refer to as the magnificent Bengal, number 63, Joe Walter. Good to see you.
I couldn't be the fittest Bengal.
Straight out. Marvin Lewis is apparently going to go in there and ask Mike Brown, and I do believe this, and I felt since February this was going to happen with Marvin, and say, we need some scouts. We need to structure this organization differently. We need some facilities too, but I think more importantly, he needs to have say over his assistants, and they need personnel help in the scouting department.
And I think
do you think that'll happen?
Do I think it'll happen?
Yeah.
It's going to be Sam Whiteshaw all over again.
I agree.
He's going to walk in there. Mike's going to say, we're okay with the way we've got it. We've made it work this long. 8-8 is good for me. That's all I really want. I don't need to go to a Super Bowl. I don't want to go to the Super Bowl. I don't want to go to the playoffs. I just want to try to get butts.
You really
in
think
seats.
he believes that way?
Isn't it obvious?
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, down in his, you think when he goes home at night, he says, "I'm happy to be 8-8. That I don't want to go to a Super Bowl." Or?
I've heard words come out of mouths that it costs too much money for us to go to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And I do believe that the ultimate goal is to protect as much of that money as can be protected. Would you guys bring him back next
Marvin?
year? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think if Marvin had a little bit more control over his assistant coaches, I think there's got to be some changes there. We all know who those changes are. And I think that he needs to get a hold of this team again, get some discipline back into this team.
But don't you think, Joe, a lot of that is the players know that he's not in charge, and ultimately it's the owner.
I think that falls into place, but Marvin, they all felt like Marvin was in charge when he first came into the organization.
That's right.
And he took his foot up, but the big thing was the Chris Henry deal. When Mike brought him back and Marvin didn't want him back, I think that's where he lost it.
Let's talk about Carson Palmer for a second, because he's the other lightning rod in this town. E.T., he had a horrendous season. I don't know how anybody can look. I mean, you can look at numbers and where he ranks and this and that. The pick sixes, and I know we rallied here the last few weeks. Palmer's going to make $11.5 million next year. As you go forward with this thing and try to piece it back together again, do you want Palmer back on this team?
Yeah, I do. And the reason why is because I think that you have to look at the overall landscape of the NFL. It's a league where the hardest position to fill year in and year out is quarterback. I think that we have a guy here who can make some plays. I think that unless you can get to the point where you say, from a schematic standpoint, we give him something better, something that he can do better, I think that that's where Carson's problem is. You look at how he's played, and you would think that in 8 years he'd have the opportunity to run this offense. I mean, go up to the line of scrimmage and run it. He didn't get that opportunity. I mean, you know, just looking at the game, it looks like the game's still being called from upstairs. I think that's a problem for him, and unless he gets that opportunity, I think he's going to continue to struggle.
I think they're kind of stuck with him anyway, given the way they're set up. I mean, who are they going to replace him with? They're not going to bring anybody in here next year that's going to be the starting quarterback that's going to know more than he does about
Jordan
what goes on.
No problem with Jordan?
No problem with Jordan, but I don't think he's a starting quarterback.
I mean, let's be realistic. You know, Jordan Palmer. I mean, he's not a quarterback that's going to play in this league. I mean, on most teams he wouldn't be most teams' third-team quarterback in this league. That's a fact.
We're going to talk more about that. Also, the Bengals have an option on Ocho Cinco. Should they pick up $6 million for Ocho Cinco, or pay him $3.5 million and say, you know, have a nice life? That story and more Bengal hot topics. We're going to try and fix the Bengals on Sports Rock here. Straight ahead when the rock rolls on in just a second. Joe, you okay? I saw you.
I didn't go.